Welcome to Next 2.0 with Marcus Atkinson on WQLN PBS NPR. The Public's Voice Media produces this show. You can follow our show on Facebook and Instagram at Next 2.0 Erie, where you can keep up with news and updates about what's next for our community and our democracy. Thank you for listening. And now, on to the show.
This show has been long in the making. Today, I interview a personal friend of mine, a woman that I'm very proud of, a woman that I've known from the neighborhood, the hood, if you will, from when we were kids. Today, I am chatting with Sonya Byes from Chatting with Sonya and Friends. Sonya, it is so nice to have you on the show today.
Well, thank you very much, Marcus. And I would have to second that. It's been a very long time coming.
Yeah, excellent. Well, this felt like the perfect timing because, one, we're kicking off 2025, and the media in general, of which we're both a part of, the media is in for a bumpy ride, an interesting ride, nationally. But this is shaping up to be a pivotal year as well when it comes to Erie, right?
I would agree.
I know that women are a huge part of the impetus behind why you started the show. I know that's not the only audience you're looking for, but women are a big part of who you're going after. We've got a woman running for mayor. That's a big deal.
That's a big deal.
And there's a lot of women that are making their mark here. And by no coincidence, as we talk about women, Sonya is being honored by the Mercy Center for Women as one of their 2025 Women Making History recipients. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. What an honor. Yeah, I was really honored to get that call and caught off guard, actually.
Yeah.
I was really surprised, but very grateful nonetheless.
And so this year is kicking up. So you are, and it's the 32nd annual, just making that clear. These ladies have been doing this and recognizing women for their achievement for 30 plus years. And so you are kicking off yet another year. This is how many years now for Chatting with Sonya?
It is 3 years on air, but it's been about, this has been floating around as an idea. So if we grab all the years, put all the years together, it's probably been about 10, 15 years.
Okay, so 10, 15 years.
10, 15
and I
years
remember when you were dreaming out loud about this.
Yes, I was. Right? It's been quite the journey.
And so 3 official years on the air.
Yes.
10, 15 years total in terms of planning and everything else. And so you start this fourth year, right? You are being honored as one of the women making history.
Yes.
And you are now the vice president of the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Center.
I am.
And so you are now Madam Vice President. So we're losing our national Madam Vice President. We are gaining a local Madam Vice President.
Yes.
For one of our beloved neighborhood centers. How does that feel?
That felt amazing.
Yeah.
Anytime that your community recognizes you in such a high regard, I'm quite honored, to say the least. I really, really am. And I'm looking forward to working in that space.
I've always found it fascinating when I follow leaders locally, nationally, historically. I'm always fascinated by their journey and their story. And it always seems that you reach a point where things just start to line up. And so I named those few things to kick off 25 to say it feels like this is going to be a benchmark year for you. I think that when all is said and done, people will probably look back and say, wow, 25 was the year where it really got set off for Sonya. Are you starting to feel that way?
Marcus, it's been a journey. And you're right, it's starting off pretty good because, quite frankly, I feel like 2024 was a very interesting year.
Okay.
And toward the end of that year, I felt exhausted, to tell you the truth. You work so hard, and behind the scenes is where a lot of the work is really happening. I'm not really an out front person, if you will, but I'm a person who likes to get the job done. Whether it's being seen or behind the scenes, the work nonetheless has to be done. And so I worked really hard in 2024, just kind of aligning some things up. There were a lot of losses, if you will, personally, some even professionally. And so 2024, at the end of that year, I was burnt out, if I'm being honest. And I just made a vow for the last couple of weeks. I was going to step back and take a break and start the first half of the year, not so much running, but very intentional. And so now at the top of the year, I'm very intentional with my time, where I'm spending my time, who I'm spending my time with, and working on things that actually matter. And so this could be the year, but it'll be a little bit of both. Transitioning, if you will, and also a little bit of work, a little bit more play, and just enjoying this year in my work. And so it's starting off pretty good, and I just pray that it continues to go that way. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to the journey, and I'm also looking forward to incorporating a little bit more travel and R&R all mixed in.
Right.
So I'm really excited, and I have some really, really good projects coming up this year.
The R&R is so important. One of my mentors has impressed that upon me time and time again, that you set these little goals for yourselves, and you want to reach each goal, but it's important for, as you reach each goal and as you're reaching for each goal, one, to take time to rest. But when you achieve these benchmarks, you got to find some way to pat yourself on the back and say you did it, right?
I agree.
Because that's the thing that keeps you going. So I can appreciate that when you say more R&R, more time to just kind of reflect and celebrate these little wins. These little wins matter.
They do matter. And, oftentimes people think celebrating your hard work is bragging or, being a little bit what they call braggadocious. Is that even a word? I've heard it so much.
It is. That's not this, but it is a word.
But I tell people all the time, give yourself permission to be proud and appreciative of the work that you've done. We work hard. We work hard, and I would advise anybody and everybody, take a moment to reflect. And I remember when Stephen A. was here not too long ago, and I had the pleasure of meeting him and getting a couple clips from him. And he did the fireside chat for the Jefferson over at Prep. And one of the things that really stuck out to me is when he said people would often ask him, like, if you can go back and change something, what would that be? And he said he really should have slowed down a little bit more. He wished he would have take a moment to enjoy those successes and just slow down to appreciate the work, because oftentimes we'll accomplish this goal and then we're off to the next. We'll get that done and off to the next. And so I'm just learning to appreciate that.
That's
and
right.
You should.
And you're talking about being braggadocious, which, again, that is not this. Oftentimes, these personal celebrations or acknowledgments are just that. They're private. Nobody's talking about calling a press conference for everything that goes well, right? But it might be you just going out, you and your family, your girls, or just you going out for that favorite steak that you like over a glass of wine that you like. Or taking time to go to the beach and reading because that's your happy place to celebrate. These are oftentimes extremely private. I have celebrated a lot of moments, and if you're listening, you will probably figure out most of y'all aren't in on it. That's not what this is. That's not what we're talking about.
Right.
But you have to recharge your batteries.
You do.
And I'm going to go back to the Stephen A. example because I think that was a great example to pull from. I say to recharge your batteries because the average person has no idea how much stuff pulls at you, both positively and negatively, when you're trying to achieve these goals. And so let me go back to Stephen A. before I throw it back to you. It's been fascinating to watch all of the hate that I've seen our brother get from some of his views, the fact that he got his bag. He's the highest paid person on ESPN.
Yes, he is.
And I'm thinking, well, how are you mad that a brother is the highest paid person on ESPN? He's earned it. He deserves it. So people will cheer until it starts to work out. And some people will turn on a dime. So you're saying you want to slow down a little bit more. Before we back you all the way up and start from the beginning of this journey, you said 24 had you burn out a little bit.
It did, toward the end.
Without getting too specific, talk about the challenges that people don't see. They see you on Sunday morning with your friends chatting. they don't see the challenges behind. Talk about that a little bit.
And as some of the challenges, and also, I read a lot and I follow positive people on social media. I'm not a scroller. I'm not on social media scrolling, but there are specific people that I tune in to watch because they are so positive and they pour into my life. Even Tabitha Brown is one of the people that I admire, and I, appreciate her story and her struggle. And she made a comment one time that really resonated with me. She was doing a podcast, and she told the gentleman, at times she didn't feel ready. There were moments and times as she was progressing, she didn't feel ready. And so the podcaster interview asked her, like, can you be a little bit more specific? And she mentioned the fact that she wasn't ready for what it is that she would lose. And so he asked her,
that's deep.
What have you lost? And she said, friendships, relationships, colleagues, if you will. And it's so true. I resonated with that. I identify with that. You do lose people in the journey. And she said she went to God and she prayed about it. And for those of you who know me, I'm a believer. I believe in God. I pray all the time. Privately and publicly, I will shout God out in a heartbeat because that's what I believe. And it's so true. And I felt lonely in this journey around so many people, but yet you feel lonely because, as she mentioned, some people weren't ready for the growth, and you outgrow a lot of things and situations and people, and you don't do the things that you once used to do because you're so hyper-focused, and that's hurtful to me. When your people who are close to you or the people that you expect to be right there and not so much as to cheering you on. It's not that you need that, but that closeness and that comfort and that confidant. Oftentimes on journeys, some of them disappear. And you bring out the insecurities in some people, and that's not a slight, it's not a dig, because
it's more of a them problem. That has nothing to do with you.
It really is, and it takes courage. And oftentimes we do so many things afraid. It's not that I possess a certain level of courage and you don't. It's that I can't afford to live my life and pass away with dreams and goals still within me.
Right.
Everything has to come out as far as I'm concerned.
You got to leave it all out on the table.
Got to put it out there.
This is a part of growth, especially when people are trying to achieve something.
Whatever that may be.
Opening up that new ice cream shop, becoming a barber, real estate agent, whatever you're trying to achieve.
Whatever it is.
People find out exactly what you just said. It comes with its fair share of shedding baggage, comes with its fair share of isolation.
It does.
Right?
Loneliness.
And loneliness.
You
and there was
lonely.
my question. That part of the journey, right? So you're talking about it resonating with your spirit when Tabitha Brown says it.
Yep.
But when you were going through it and you first started seeing signs of this dynamic, how did that land on your spirit and how did you react to it privately?
I just told myself, everybody's journey is different. Some people are ready to embark on whatever it is that they want to. And then some people are afraid. And then some people won't ever take on whatever it is that they were born to do. And again, that's a personal issue. Some people are just not ready, or then people are ready at different times in their lives. And so I just told myself, come what may, you have to keep going. You can't get stuck. And I tell my son that all the time, don't get stuck. Don't get stuck. And so I have the privilege of sharing my life with my son.
Yeah.
And
she is beaming when she talks about King Jonathan.
And so I'm just very fortunate to have him because he is indeed my person. When people and things come and go, he's right there with me, and I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can attest to the fact that you have done a phenomenal job with this young man. I don't know what other family members are in his life to whatever extent. I'm just from a mom's perspective. I think you are the quintessential mom. You glow when you talk about him. Her face is lighting up now.
That's my
And
person.
he's just a good young man. He really is.
He really is.
Yeah.
And he's grown so. I'm so proud of him. And he then became my person.
Yeah.
And he's so intelligent beyond his years. He doesn't talk a lot. He speaks when spoken to, but he became that confidant for me. He's not my husband. Like, let's not get it twisted, because oftentimes you hear Black women tend to put their sons in spaces and places where they shouldn't be. He's not my husband. He is my son, but he is also a young man, a very intelligent, witty, kind, full of wisdom young man. And so we are very, very close. And like I said, if my relationships don't extend any further, he's there for me unconditionally. And I'm grateful for that, because that doesn't happen to everybody. That doesn't happen for everybody, but I'm grateful.
I want to dig down on this idea of isolation and separation. Mm-hmm. And I look at the two media personalities that I've admired over the years that actually started to shape my desire to do this, and I didn't know it. Tavis Smiley and Rush Limbaugh. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about ideology. I know a lot of people hear Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh, brother, come, hold on. But one of the things that I noticed, both very hyper-intelligent men, ideologically opposed politically, but that's neither here nor there. Tavis had a wonderful show for years that I followed, and I just admired his intellect and the way he brought out the best in his guests and really dug without prying per se, and he carried that. Then I looked at Rush, just the bravado of a Rush Limbaugh, right? And he carried that thing on his own, and he was hugely successful. I mean, the number two guy behind him, Sean Hannity, was a distant number two. Rush was in a class all its own. And when I think about you, we've had conversations about people like Oprah, who obviously stood in a class all by herself, right? You are the catalyst of a collective. It's chatting with Sonya and Friends. And yet, when it comes to your journey, you have been separated and singled out to a great degree as well.
I have.
That's a push and pull. How do you deal with the double dutch of there are other people a part of this journey, and at the same time, I am the one being called? That can be a tricky balance. How do you deal with that?
It can be a tricky balance, but at the same time, the goal is success, right? And so if it is indeed, it feels like, I mean, it's not a one-man band or one-man show. It is a show that involves my friends, and my friends is anyone who comes through the show.
Yeah.
So these people are my friends. These people I'm reaching out to, and they're coming to share their stories or, you know, talk about what it is that they're passionate about and embracing their power and educating myself and my audience. So it's for the good of the brand. I mean, obviously it's my name, but at the same time, I like to share.
Yeah.
I do. I like to share because when I first created this platform, it's kind of like chatting with Sonya. It's not so much them. It's them chatting with me, not so much me chatting with them.
Right.
So in the opportunity when they stop by and visit me, they're actually sharing their stories. And I'm interested in them and what it is that they have to say and what it is that they have to bring because, again, I'm learning, I'm gleaning, I'm sharing.
Yeah.
And that's how I look at that. So even though I do a lot of things separately, at the end, it's all a part of the bigger picture.
Yeah. So let me take you back. So you've unpacked for us a little bit of why 2024 was a great year, it was a good year. And at the same time, it had its challenges, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
As we go back to the beginning, though, you are a child of Erie.
I am.
You grew up here. And so much like myself and countless others, we have watched all the ebbs and flows. We've watched the elders of the village be elders.
Yes.
We've been children of the village. And we have crossed over in various stages in that village. What does it feel like when you're interviewing people that have played that role in community from your childhood, and now here they are sitting on your couch on a show with your name on it as you kind of turn the tables and ask them to unpack their journey that you've watched for years? What does that feel like?
That feels amazing. It almost feels like a full circle.
Right.
And I mean, obviously, some of them are my elders. Admiration. I remember a couple of years ago, I had the WERG team came to the
Icons
show.
in our community, right?
And, some of those guys has been on that show DJing for 40 plus years.
And they've been a part of our lives.
They really have. And still today, I listen to WERG.
Yeah.
I really do. And I remember thinking back, like, we used to clean up to this music.
Yeah.
We had those Saturday chores to
Oh,
this
my
music.
goodness.
We were headed to little parties
That's right.
with this music. And so I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I enjoyed them. In awe, actually.
Yeah.
And, these are people who volunteered 40 years of their lives.
To entertain us and to be a part of our lives.
We literally grew up on that radio station.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to do it. I take pride in doing it. I still listen.
Yeah.
And other people, too, like Gary Horton, come through Trailblazer, have opened the doors for many of us over many, many years. And Denise, I'm name dropping right now, but these are some of the people who have inspired me, on air, behind the scenes, text me, check on me. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that. And so now we, Marcus, we owe it back to, we owe it to our youth to give back and to mentor them. And I never had a mentor. And that's probably where my sense of help comes from. If anybody, if I can do, I do. If I can, I will. And that's my give back to my community. And I absolutely love it. So come full circle.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning WERG. I think about Bobby K all the time.
I love that.
Right? I look at some of the violence in our community, and I kid you not, I often find myself saying, what would Bobby K say? Because remember, and if you don't know Bobby K and you're listening to this, he was one of the DJs. And I even hate to say one of the DJs almost minimizes their roles. One of the mentors and elders of our village and our community growing up, who just happened to play music for us on Saturday mornings. And if there was a fight at one of the parties, you knew Bobby K was going to get on the air.
He was,
and preach about, now y'all know better than that. Now,
Yes,
we are
he
bigger
did.
than this. We are better than that. And, you hear Bobby K on the radio. Yeah, man, you was tripping.
That's
You know?
right. And he cared. And you can tell he really cared about us.
Yeah, and so even from a media standpoint, to carry, because some of that is in your DNA, right? Some of that is in the DNA of this show. And to carry that is a big deal. When you started to figure out this media thing, this interviewing people, when, and if you can put your finger on it, at what point did you realize, hey, I want to do that? When did it strike you?
Well, I've always been fascinated by people. And even as a young girl, I could remember, in my tween ages, between 10, 11, I always knew that there was, behind every face, there's a story.
That's right.
And so you never know what a person is thinking, what a person is going through. What does that person have to offer to the greater good? And I always wanted to know, what makes you tick? What makes you happy? What makes you sad? What would you be if you could? In a perfect world, what does your life look like? And it always fascinated me because people are so different. Yeah. Everybody has so much to offer. Yeah. And I always just believe there's good in everyone. You just have to look for it and find it. I do believe that.
That's deep, because the average person, there's so many people that have these default realities. Like, this is what I do because I have to. Right? So you're saying in a perfect world, this is where I live because it meets my circumstances, not necessarily where I. And so you want to unpack that. Did you ever watch somebody who did this well? So for Oprah, it was Barbara Walters, who did this well. And even now, from an anchor position, I enjoy watching Lester Holt. I call Lester Holt the new Walter Cronkite. I think he's the anchor that America just trusts, right? And even when he's just reporting the news, there's a presence about Lester that makes you sit up and really pay attention. Who did you watch that did this well, that made you say, that's how you do it?
Well, obviously, I mean, it probably sounds cliche, but it was Oprah.
Yeah.
I was in 8th grade, and I remember getting out of school, racing to the bus, running home to watch Oprah. And we would tune in our channels just to see who would be on there. What would she ask? And I was fascinated by what she was able to get out of people. In the beginning, it started out kind of for me a little bit. It just was a show where people would just come on and talk about things. And then it was the one I really remember was when she had the Ku Klux Klan on there, and it just didn't go over that well.
She was trying to find her voice.
I think she was new, trying to figure it out like we all are at some point in time in our lives. But then after the years went on, there was a shift. And she vowed, I will take and utilize this show to help people find who they are and make their lives a little bit better. And then she went on a quest to do that. And I thought, wow, by way of conversation, you can bring out the best in people. And I remember having this opportunity to be on WICU. And I remember praying about it. And I told God, I'm in a position now where I can influence people in the best way possible. What is it that I can bring to this space that would motivate people, inspire them, and encourage them? And I didn't take that lightly. So when I'm looking for guests, I'm looking for the people who are watching. What is it that I can give to them? Who is it that I can present here that would feed their spirit or educate them on certain things? And so I know now that there's people out there watching. They say it. I meet them in the grocery stores, in the mall. Even the mechanic was like, I'll see you on Sunday. The mechanic. And he's a guy, mind you.
Yeah, right.
In the mall, the security guard, who's a guy, and he's like, I watch you every Sunday. Are you Sonya? And I thought, oh my gosh, like these people are literally watching this show every Sunday. And at a time, it made me a little bit nervous because I thought, oh my gosh, what am I bringing into these people's homes and living rooms? And so I made a conscious decision to say, anybody who's stopping by, they have something to say, they have something to offer, and who's ever out there watching, it is my goal or my intent that you'll walk away at least learning something, feeling good, feeling better, again, educated on something, or say, wow, I really didn't know that. And so that's my goal.
So I hear what you're saying about Oprah, and you gave in your own little way a critique of what it looked like when she was trying to find it. Mm-hmm. And then you also gave your critique of, this is what it looks like when she found it. And that really hit home for you.
It did.
Scale of 1 to 10. Mm-hmm. How much do you believe you have found your voice at this point in your journey on the show?
Oh gosh, I'm an avid learner. I'm constantly learning. I would say I have found myself, I would say about a 7.
Okay.
I would say about a 7 because I'm always looking to learn more and do more and grow more and evolve more. I don't think we'll ever get to a place where we can say, hey, I'm at a 10. I got it.
I agree.
No one will ever get to a 10 if you want to keep evolving and growing and learning and moving. So to me, I'm about a 7. I'm always open to learn, to grow, and to evolve. And I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
You brought up a couple of listeners that approached you on the street, 2 of which were men that you pointed out.
Yes.
So make the differentiation for us and for the listener. So Chatting with Sonya obviously has a target audience of women and issues surrounding women. Mm-hmm. But that attracts a large swath of people, right?
It does.
Where do these women's issues, when people ask you about your mission, how do you unpack that in terms of, this is my dedication and commitment to the stories of women, and this is what I have to offer the greater community? How do you unpack that for people?
Well, furthermore, it did start out, just wanting to talk to women, encourage women, focus on women and the issues that we go through. for a time, I worked in corporate for over 20 years. And as being a woman, and especially a woman of color, we often felt unseen and unheard. And you hear women say that, and it's true. I've experienced it. My friends have experienced it. Colleagues have experienced it. And it's not just women of color. It's women as a whole. But then evidently, you know, when you're a person of color, you get whatever is bad a tad bit worse. And so I thought I wanted to create a space and a place where we can get together and have these conversations, predominantly women of color. Then that way we would see each other, we would hear each other, and we really wanted to hear what each other was feeling and thinking and was going through. So that space was for that. And I've done that. And we still do talk around women and their issues, like menopause is a big thing. We talked about parenting, single moms. We also talked about postpartum depression, which a lot of women of color didn't really talk about that. We talked about our hair, the Crown Act, and a lot of people didn't know about that. Discrimination in the workplace, the Crown Act is a whole other subject
big
we
conversation.
tackled. And so people really learned from that. And as I started to evolve in this space, community start kind of latching on and attaching itself to the conversations at large. And so though we started off as women in women's issues, it evolved into community, and then women discussing community.
Yeah.
And so we're still women, we still talk about our issues, but yet we've incorporated our community because it kind of goes hand in hand.
It does. It does.
And so when we're looking to inspire people and encourage people, educate them, it doesn't matter your sex, your race, or what have you. It's just now women who are talking about and having conversations and discussions about these community issues, and it involves the community at large.
So the broader conversation about women and the plight of women and women's issues
Yes.
really was laid bare on a national level when you had a woman of color run for the highest office in the land.
Yes.
And arguably the most hotbed issue of all issues during that campaign was women's reproductive rights.
Yes, it was.
And so between that and now when you parse it down on a local level, you have yet another qualified woman running to be mayor of Erie. Mm-hmm. And when you look on that wall of mayoral faces in City Hall, you see this sea of men, not just men, white men, mm-hmm. and this one lonely woman, Joyce Savacchio, an icon unto herself, on that wall. And you have another woman going for that seat right now. And so that is her running. And the fact that a lot of people are giving her a solid shot is history in the making. Politically, mm-hmm. politics is very polarizing.
Yes, it is.
And I'm wondering how much has that seeped into the dialogue and the discourse on your show? And what does the future hold for conversations on Chatting with Sonya and the political sector? Because, love it or hate it, the intersection right now is more stark than it probably has ever been. How do you see that playing out from 25 forward? Because there's a lot to be talked about, but it can turn people off a whole lot quicker than just everyday conversation. What are your thoughts?
Well, you know what, Marcus? I think regardless, you can't get around politics, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just infused in our everyday life, whether you want to turn a blind eye to it, whether you're watching it every day, all day on CNN, it's not going away. And so as far as women throwing their hats in the ring, I applaud them like 1,000%. And you're right, we can't be remiss without checking in to see, you know, where are women as far as the political race goes? Where do we want to be? How do we tackle the issues that are important to women? And in this election, reproduction rights were on the ballot. We felt very strongly about that. We were able to openly discuss our views and opinions on abortion's right. Mm-hmm. And we did. And so on the one particular episode, we had the pro-life people come on. And then, you know, we had the pro-choice. That was a hot topic for us. You know, there were people who felt very strongly. On both sides. Yep. But at the same time, we must be respectful of people and their right to choose, or their right, whatever it is, wherever you are on that spectrum,
point.
you have a right to choose. So we will promote that. We will always promote, women have a right to run. We had discussions on why and how women run, and women run because of the causes. It's important to us to have representation in spaces, in rooms, at the tables, to discuss the issues that are important to us. And what a shame, out of Erie's history, only one woman mayor?
Yeah.
What a shame. And so I encourage and applaud any woman who's brave enough to want to go out there and make change. Call me, because we can definitely talk about it. That's a plug.
I would be remiss if I did not ask your opinion and your thoughts. When you think about Vice President Harris and her run for the office, and all of the qualifications on this woman's resume, and I don't care if you hate Kamala Harris, you cannot deny
You cannot
the
disqualify
qualifications
her.
on that woman's resume. When you watched how easy it was for her to be reduced to some tramp who got to the top on her back as a woman and as a black woman, how did that make you feel to have all of this woman's accomplishments not just discounted and discarded, but to have her labeled in such a way, despite the fact that she has been the very best of us, and in many ways, who we want our daughters to be? What were your thoughts on that?
It was a disgrace and quite disrespectful, if I'm honest. She was referred to as tramps, and her team was referred to as pimps, and it was just disgraceful.
Yeah.
And she, as you mentioned, was one of the most qualified individuals outside of being black, outside of being a woman. She was definitely qualified for the highest office on every level. And quite frankly, it was rather bothersome to hear everything. Like, so many people didn't even focus on her qualifications, her experience. It just, by her being a woman and a black woman, I think that some people couldn't even get past those two things right there.
Right.
They couldn't even get past that. But at the same time, as a woman of color myself, it was very hurtful to watch her go through that entire process.
Yeah.
But today, I would, want everyone and anyone who is listening, she was more than qualified. Whether you liked her or not, she was qualified and would have done a wonderful, wonderful job in the highest office. And as a woman of color myself, we can't stop. Hopefully that didn't stop her or any other woman, and especially a woman of color, to throw their hat in the race, because we are qualified. We are qualified.
And when you looked at the difference, because I still talk to people, they didn't like Kamala Harris for this reason, that reason. I'm like, that's all fair game. As you pointed out, when it comes to politics, there were black folks who voted for Trump. That is your prerogative.
Absolutely.
But don't tell me all of these things were the reasons that you didn't have adequate respect for this woman, because simultaneously, not just the vice president, the first ladies, there were nude and still are nude photographs floating around of the first lady, and you didn't vilify her like this. I want you to remember when a woman of color was Miss America and nude photos were found. Oh my God, you can't be Miss America with nude and you excoriated this poor sister, that being Vanessa Williams.
I remember.
And the first lady, sitting right now, has nude photos floating around, which means nothing. And lastly, let me say this is my soapbox, not Sonya's, so don't charge it to her. She had an affair with Willie Brown. Okay, time out. I'm not going to say whether she did or she didn't. I can give you the marital issues of a lot of powerful people in this city, black and white. Mm-hmm. I've had my own marital issues. And I would listen to some of these same people like, if the city knew about your situation with so-and-so, how would that fare for you? We all have our stuff, as you pointed out earlier.
Everybody has their stuff. Some people happen to get caught, some don't. Some people are in public spaces where they're scrutinized a little bit more.
Yeah.
But everyone, it just goes back to the ye old saying, people who live in glass houses should not throw stones.
Yeah, yeah. And so it has seeped its way into your conversation. And I'm guessing that you see probably more conversations with a political slant to it because obviously there's a lot to discuss.
There is a lot to discuss. And again, going back to that conversation where we talked about reproduction rights, women are scrutinized and disgraced for like the abortions. But again, I happen to be pro-choice. Now, me personally, I am not an abortion person for me in my life, but I'm not against anybody who's deciding otherwise for their life.
Right.
I don't get to live two lives. I don't get to make decisions for people, family sizes and households. Neither do I want to. I got my own. Not interested.
Amen to that.
So people who are making decisions for their lives, I'll allow them to do that. It's none of my business.
That's none of your business.
None of my business.
I am pro. I believe in life at conception, and I'm pro-choice. Because
absolutely.
The God that you talked about earlier, last I checked, he allows you to make choices.
Yes, he does.
If he has his druthers, these are the things that I want for you. But you have a right to choose it.
You have a right to choose, and who are we to act like we're higher than the highest?
Exactly.
The higher power, I should just say.
Well, before we close, let me ask you this. The episodes, you've got 3 years in.
Yes.
The episode or two that you are most proud. Let's go with the episode that you are most proud of and why. I know that's a hard one. Which one of your kids is your favorite child?
That's a really hard one.
But which one really stands out and say, I'm proud of that episode, and this is...
I would reflect back to the one that just kind of sits right here, and there's actually two. The Crown Act. The Crown Act, because I am a woman of color, and for women of color, our hair is our expression.
Hyper creative.
It is hyper creative. It's who we are. It's an expression of how we present ourselves to the world, whether it's be in your work, your careers, your play, however you want to view a woman of color. Our hair introduces us, even if we're not even saying a word, right? And so for us to be allowed to express ourselves with the creativity of it, long and short and braided and natural and afro and bald even, we should be able to do that without event. We should not be discriminated in the workplace or schools or educational institutions, anywhere, for our hair. And for us to educate people on that, we had a lot of people saying they never even heard of the Crown Act.
Right, because they don't have to worry about it.
There was discrimination in the schools and the workplace. And for us to be able to bring light to that situation, I was very happy about that and very proud that people were interested enough to reach out and ask, we didn't know this. How can we do better? We learned what to and what not to say.
I got to interrupt you, Sonya. When you said, how can we do better? Please unpack this. Can you help the listener understand and appreciate why it is a no-no to try to touch a black woman's hair as you're admiring it without permission?
Well, and I've had that question a lot of times. For people who know me, know my hair is big and afro-ish, and I absolutely love it. But it's sort of like a disrespectful way to just reach out and touch somebody's hair.
Yeah.
And though people don't mean any harm, it could be them admiring your hair. It's just not best practices. We don't do that as a culture, as women of color.
That's a good point.
And so it's just, you can admire from a distance. And if you want to ask, people sometimes don't have a problem with that, but you do need to ask.
Yeah.
Because we don't do that. You don't just walk up to somebody and put your hands in their hair. First of all, it can be unsanitary. I don't know where your hand's been. But it's a disrespect to a woman of color. It's kind of like the women, Middle Eastern, who wear is it hijabs?
Yeah, hijabs, I think, yeah.
But you just don't walk up to people and touch anything.
That's an excellent point.
So, yeah, you don't do that. But if you have questions or you're just admiring somebody, you can have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it's all a learning experience.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't bother me when people want to know. Oftentimes we talk about DE&I and learning and doing better, but you can't be offended when someone is asking you questions when they really want to know.
They want to know.
How are they going to do better if you're not open to show them how to do and be better?
So you said 2 episodes jumped out at you. That was one, the Crown Act. What was the other?
And the other was the abortion show. Because to me, even though people disagree, it got a little bit heated. But at the same time, I just made sure that we were all respectful and we can respect each other, although we disagree. And we were able to do that, even though it got a little bit testy. People should be allowed to have their opinions as long as it's tasteful. We should be able to agree to disagree without being harmful and violent and disrespectful. Now, is it like that in the world today? Absolutely not. But in my space, I try to create a safe space for everyone, whether they agree or not. We should be adult enough and, intelligent enough to have these conversations and agree to disagree.
So in closing, you're at a pivotal part of your journey with this concept that has been floating around in your heart and in your mind for years, that you've given birth to, if you will, a couple of years ago. And now that it's been actualized, people are getting a chance to get in on this dream and this vision with you. They're joining you on this journey. They're giving you verbal and physical affirmations. And I know that feels great. What can we expect from Sonya? Not just from chatting with Sonya, but from Sonya as a woman and as a talk show host going forward.
Okay, what you can expect from Sonya is sort of more of the same. But again, I'm evolving. I'm growing as a person. And I'm really, really excited. I've made some great collaborations along the way, some of which I've talked about publicly, some not so much. But I just want people to stay tuned. So like I said, there's some great things coming down the pipe. I'm looking forward to this year. Still wanting to help, still wanting to volunteer. So excited about being Madam VP for the MLK Center. Love that title. So I'm looking forward to helping out in that space. And you're going to see a lot more of Sonya getting involved in a couple other different spaces, but nonetheless still growing, evolving, and being a safe space for people to come and chat.
Sonya Byes, a 2025 woman making history. She's been making history, but it's being recognized this year. And thank you so much for coming on my show to chat.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's always fun being here.
Oh, yeah. And listen, we look forward to watching everything that unfolds in 2025 and beyond. It's been a stellar ride so far.
Thank you very much.
I've enjoyed watching it from a distance, and it's been fun. So stay tuned. There will be more with Chatting with Sonya as time goes on. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me.
Tune in next time for more riveting discussions with local and national guests. Next 2.0 streams on Fridays on all major podcast platforms and on the fourth Sunday of the month at 4 p.m. on WQLN, PBS, NPR, which is 91.3 FM on your dial. You can leave a message, comment, or suggestion for the show on the next hotline at 814-240-8816. We look forward to hearing from you. Come and join us again so that you hear about what's next for our community and our democracy. Thanks for listening.